Hey everybody, welcome to the Fantasy Players Club. I'm your host, Levi the Heartbreak Kid Valentine, at Levi_Valentine on Twitter. Joining me are my co-hosts, Brent Hud Hikes. Follow him at Brent Hikes, Heikes on Twitter, and Trevin, the girl dad, Cremosta, whose tweets are too hot for your eyes. Trevin, big news this week. You having a girl. Congratulations, buddy.
Congrats.
Thanks, man. Thanks, Brent. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, the whole experience has been cool, but to know the gender, it really makes it real, I guess you could say. And we had the girl name picked out, so it's a pretty cool feeling.
You're not willing to share the name with us, or what?
No, but I don't think I'm going to reveal that here. Yeah, it's cool.
4 months left to not let it slip. Don't mess it up.
I'm not too worried about it. Yeah, but thanks, guys. It was a cool day. My parents and her parents all got to be around, and everybody's excited.
Yeah, my advice is going to be of limited value going forward as a father of two boys, but Brent is your go-to guy now as the one with two daughters. So, Brent, any words of wisdom you want to drop on this newly anointed girl dad?
That's a lot. I don't know. Just love them. I mean, that's all I can really say. I mean, as they get older, they don't want to snuggle and hug you as much as they used to. So take advantage of it in the early years. So that's all I got to say.
Yeah, appreciate it. I'll need all the help I can get, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, that's exciting. It was fun watching you and your lovely wife pop that confetti out there and celebrate that baby girl you'll be having here in a few short months. So we're excited for you.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Let's hop into the main event. For tonight's main event, we have an NFC North preview. So we've got the Bears, the Lions, the Packers, and the Vikings as we work towards the season here, fellas. Our picks from last year on this one, Brent, were kind of hit and miss here. So I had as my dynasty by Allen Robinson. You had TJ Hawkinson, and John, Dynasty Coach A, joined us last year. He had AJ Dillon as his pick. Dynasty Cell, you had David Montgomery, or I had David Montgomery. You had Dalvin Cook, and John had Dalvin Cook as well. That one, maybe not so hot after Dalvin Cook finished as the number 2 running back last year, Brent.
Mm-hmm. That hurt.
David Montgomery did all right too, but he wasn't that good. My stash was Irv Smith. You had AJ Dillon, and John had Jay Sternberger, so none of us really knocked it out of the park on that one. Our redraft sleeper, I had Stafford. You had David Montgomery, and John had Marvin Jones, who had a pretty good year. And then redraft fade, my pick was... We both picked Aaron Jones, which looks pretty terrible in hindsight, and John picked Aaron Rodgers, who was the MVP. So kind of a rough look on the redraft fade for everybody there.
Yeah. I probably would have skipped saying that, Levi. Jeez. Wow. It was ugly.
Got to keep us honest, Brent. So let's see if we can do a little better this year. Trevin, who is your dynasty buy?
So my dynasty buy... might surprise you a little bit. I've actually got Kirk Cousins. Oh, damn it. I wasn't going to reveal the name yet. I wasn't going to have you guess him, but here's some stats of Kirk Cousins that kind of surprised me. There's only 2 quarterbacks in the 6 consecutive top 15 seasons in the last 6 years. Can you guess who they are?
Kirk Cousins.
That's one of them, yes.
In the last 6 years?
Yep.
Is Rodgers up there?
Nope.
Brady?
Nope. So it's only Kirk Cousins
Stafford?
and Russell Wilson. That's the whole list. So Cousins has actually outscored Matt Stafford in every season from 2015 to 2020. He's outscored Baker Mayfield all 3 years that he's been the starting quarterback. And he's been within 50 points of Wilson scoring in 4 of the past 6 years. So if you break that down to how many points per game or points per week, that's only 2.5 points per week than behind Wilson. So Wilson's going in ADP for dynasty leagues around 50, and Kirk Cousins is actually going to 123, and that's behind Wilson, Mayfield, Tannehill, Goff, and Stafford. So I think his value is just so low. His contract is pretty much he's going to be the starter there for the next 2 years. So based on his history, he's going to be a top 15 quarterback. Now he's limited. He's not going to get up there to that top 8, I don't think, because he doesn't have the rushing upside. But he's got great weapons there. So I'm pretty comfortable paying that price and getting pretty much guaranteed that he's going to give me 2 more good years there and with the Vikings offense.
Do you know offhand what his best finish was in those years?
I would guess 9 or 10. Now that's his ceiling.
He was actually quarterback 4 in 2016 and quarterback, I think it was 6 in 2017.
Wow.
Yeah, quarterback 6. So he has, or at least historically, before we had as many rushing quarterbacks as we do now, quite a bit of upside. I think, Trevin, I like your pick, and he was actually 9 in 2015, so he's been pretty consistent there, like you alluded to. I think he's the perfect second quarterback to have in your Superflex league. So if you have somebody like a number, one of the top 3 to 5 guys who has that real high upside, the rushing upside that you allude to, like a Kyler or Lamar Jackson or somebody like that, I think he's the perfect consistent quarterback that you can pair with that and just bank that no matter what happens, he's going to provide you quarterback 1 to quarterback, high-end quarterback 2 numbers, and that other player can really be the one that really sets you apart. So I like him a lot as my second option in Superflex.
Trevin, I don't hate it, but for Dynasty buy, I'm not looking to buy him in Dynasty. You say he has at least 2 solid years with the Vikings. If they don't make the playoffs, or if he has a average year, kind of like what he's been doing, yeah, he's pretty good for fantasy, but the Vikings might look elsewhere at the end of the year. They can either cut him, they'll draft someone else.
They really can't cut him, though, is the thing. I mean, they can, but they still have to pay the guaranteed contract he's got next year. He's one of the few players that has a fully guaranteed contract.
Or trade him. I mean, I don't know. It's just
which they can do, but it's fully guaranteed from Sport Track here, $45 million next year.
Okay. I don't know. I mean, this year I think he'll have a decent year. I mean, I do like him for your quarterback 2 for this year, especially in a super flex. But I mean, it's a big question mark for me next year. I see him either at Minnesota next year or somewhere else with a young stud rookie quarterback breathing down his neck next year. So that's why I don't like him very, very much for next year.
I just have a hard time seeing that, for one, for the contract reasons that Trevin mentioned, and 2, like, he's been not an elite quarterback, but he's been a very good quarterback that I think has shown that he's a starting caliber quarterback in the league. And I don't think of him as like a Tyrod Taylor who's gonna just be your bridge to a rookie. I think he's someone that you're banking on to start and keep your team competitive throughout the year. And I don't think you're gonna win a Super Bowl with Kirk Cousins, and that's why I probably wouldn't want him as my quarterback in real life. But I think for a fantasy perspective, he's pretty safe to have a job for the next 3 to 5 years.
Okay, I guess I wouldn't say safe, but I mean, yeah, he definitely has I mean, he'll be playing in the NFL for another 3 to 5 years. I just think the last couple of those years, maybe the last 3, maybe the last 4, that he'll just be like a journeyman, like a Tyrod Taylor. I mean, eventually it's got to come to that.
Eventually, but look how many bad quarterbacks are in the league that are starting this year. I mean, you have Carson Wentz in Indianapolis. You have Sam Darnold in Carolina. I mean, it's just
the aforementioned Tyrod Taylor.
Tyrod Taylor, if Deshaun Watson doesn't play, it's rough. Drew Lock or Teddy Bridgewater in Denver, Jared Goff in Detroit. Like, there's 6 or 8 quarterbacks that I think Cousins is pretty safely better than for the near future. And I know new guys come into the league every year, but half of those or more don't pan out. So, I mean, Derek Carr, I think Cousins is better than Carr. I don't know if you would agree with that as a Raiders fan, Trevin.
I don't.
I think they're similar roles. That they're both. That's not the reason the team's losing, but they're also not they are the reason they're not going to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Cam Newton potentially starting some games this year. Jameis and Taysom in New Orleans. Daniel Jones in New York. I mean, there's a pretty long list of quarterbacks I'd take Cousins over. So I just think he's going to be around, and I wouldn't hesitate to trade for him. Like I said, I like him as your number 2 option in Superflex.
Yep.
Yeah, I
All
mean,
right, Brent.
not bad. Go. Oh,
Brent,
my turn.
who's your buy?
My buy is once again TJ Hawkinson. I had him as my buy last year. I have him as my buy again. His value is down a little bit, probably because he doesn't have Stafford, and he didn't have that breakout year that everybody was thinking that he was going to have last year. But he did make progress last year. He had 67 catches, 723 yards, and 6 touchdowns, which was a very quiet 67 catches, 723 yards. I do think he will definitely be Jared Goff's go-to passing weapon all year. He did have 101 targets last season, and I think there's definitely potential for a lot more targets this year in that offense. He's the number one option, period. But passing option, I should say. He could actually make a lot of fantasy owners very happy this year. He can maybe get 140 targets and maybe get like 80 catches and maybe close to 1,000 yards, maybe around 6 to 8 touchdowns. But long term, yeah, I know Jared Goff won't be there forever. Probably this might be his last year at Detroit. He could definitely be the top target for a young rookie quarterback next year, because I expect the Lions not to be that good this year. I think they'll probably get a college quarterback like a Rattler or a Sam Howell, or I don't know, some top 10, 15 quarterback. And as you guys know, rookie quarterbacks, their favorite target is usually dumping it off to the tight end. So I think Hawkinson could be a favorite for a rookie quarterback next year and for years to come. So with where he's getting drafted, I think there's a good chance he can maybe break out this year and maybe get into the top 3, maybe pass someone like a George Kittle. I don't think he can pass Darren Waller. Don't think he can pass healthy Travis Kelce, but maybe he can be that number 3 tight end overall.
Yeah, he was my bold prediction last year was that Hawkinson would be a top 3 tight end, and I think he just squeaked in there at number 3, so that worked out pretty well if I remember correctly. But Trevin, do you like Hawkinson?
I don't know. I like him. I think his value is kind of where it's at. So you'd rank him 3rd then, Brent? You said it'd be Kelce and Waller and Hawkinson for you.
Yeah, I'd say there's a decent chance of that happening. Now, if we're talking right now, I don't know. There's a debate between him and Kittle, but
Sure.
I think he definitely has potential. And Kelce, I mean, I know he's been healthy the last couple of years, but Kelce has an injury history. George Kittle definitely has an injury history, and Darren Waller hasn't been practicing. And Kyle Pitts is a rookie. So
Yeah, and we do all agree Pitts is in front of him. I know.
So I mean, Hawkinson could easily be up there. I mean, all those guys. I mean, there's question marks for all those top tight ends right now. And Hawkinson, I mean, he's a top guy in that offense, and who knows what can happen. I mean, he's just going to get better. So that's why I'm really liking him this year.
Brent, I will clarify. Kelce has missed 1 game in his each in 2017 and 1 in 2020. So he's been on the field.
No. He missed all of his rookie year with the injury.
Okay, in 2013, and 2 games since.
Right. But I mean, Kyle, as a younger guy, I mean, he's 30-some years old now.
Yeah.
I mean, you never know.
You never know. But so Brent, with your tight end 3, are you saying that for this season, or are you saying that just in Dynasty he ranks your tight end 3?
Dynasty.
Okay.
So I do agree with you, Brent, that I think he's pretty popular rated for me. I think I'd have Kelce and Pitts and Waller and probably even with Kittle. But if I was needing a tight end, I would definitely take him before the Andrews, Fant, Irv Smith, Tanyan level. So I think he's comfortably above all those other names I listed there. So I do like him. And this season, I think the Lions are going to be terrible, but he's a good dynasty buy, I think.
Yeah, he's currently going as tight end 5 in dynasty startups behind Waller at 4, Kittle at 3, Pitts at 2, and Kelce at 1. So yeah, a little below where you have him, Brent. So I like Hawkinson. I think he's going to have a really good year. But I have to be honest, guys. I really struggled with Dynasty buy and sell this week, so I'm adding some caveats to my buy. My caveat is that I think for contenders, this guy is the perfect buy, and it's Aaron Rodgers. So if you're a contender, I think he's one of the best buy candidates that you'll find. He's coming off that MVP season. I think he has 2 more elite years at least. One this year to mimic the Last Dance season he used to describe this upcoming year for him and Devonte. And then 1 more year after that to make the Packers look as stupid as possible wherever he lands. So I think he's pretty freaking motivated for those 2. And beyond that, I wouldn't count on anything, but I think you're getting at least 2 more really good years. That said, I would expect slightly lesser seasons than what we got from him in 2020. Just some interesting stats here from last year that are wild. Completed a league best 71% of his passes, led the NFL with 48 passing touchdowns to only 5 interceptions. That blew my mind. 48 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Seeing that. He'll probably have some statistical regression to the mean. He finished top 5 in completion percentage, yards per attempt, and touchdown percentage in 2020. He was no better than 15th in each of those the previous 2 seasons. He's unlikely to repeat the season as the number 2 scoring fantasy quarterback, but he's been a top 10 quarterback in every season in which he's appeared in at least 15 games. So he's, I think, a pretty safe quarterback one. And I think he's probably going to be on the higher end of that, just like I mentioned earlier. So I think he's the perfect in-season target if you need an elite quarterback to push your team over the top, because I think, like Brady, his age is going to keep people from giving him the dynasty value he probably should have. So go out and buy Rodgers if you're a contender and go win a championship in the next 2 years.
I can't disagree with it, especially if you're a contender. So, I mean, I know he at least has 2, maybe 3 years left in him, and it's Aaron Rodgers. It'll probably be good years. So
I think I'd even go a step farther. I don't know if I'd even say it has to be a contending team. The way he just won MVP I think he's 36 when he won it. He's 37 now. And he doesn't seem to be slowing down as one of his better years. So I don't think you even have to think of it as a window being this next year. I think you're pretty safe saying he's going to be an elite quarterback 3 or 4 years just based on what Tom Brady's doing and what Rodgers' past season was.
Yeah, he is 37. He'll turn 38 in December. So
gotcha.
Not that makes a huge difference, but the only thing I question with him is I don't know. I guess, do you think he has the motivation to play 4 more years, or do you think if he wins 1 more, he's the guy who just quits?
Yeah, but I don't know if I want to be making my dynasty decisions off that. I know it's something you have to think about, but if you can get him for as low as it seems to be on this ranking I'm looking at here, then just cross your fingers he doesn't just leave the game, I guess.
Yeah.
If he's still playing, I think he's up there with the elites.
Yeah, that's why I said I'm counting on 2 more years. If I get any more than that, then that's just gravy at that point.
Yeah. No, I like the pick. I was kind of surprised on where they were valuing him for dynasty ADPs.
Yeah, the one I saw, I think he was quarterback 10 in DLF, which is probably about right, but that's why I added the caveat that for a contender, I really like him as a buy candidate, especially in season.
Yeah. And I don't know if you're a fan of patterns, this might be something for you. Every 4 years, he does end the season with a season-ending injury. 2013, he ended the year with the season-ending injury, and then 2017 he did, and now it's 2021. So, just a heads up.
Don't like that.
Hope his doctor's ready, I guess.
All right. I'll just do my dynasty sell quick too. Again, I had a hard time making these picks, so I'm going to give a caveat that this is if you're not a contender who I'd be selling, and that's Dalvin Cook. So honestly, I thought most of the players in this division were going about where they should, and I didn't hate the values for anybody. But if you have to pick one, and like I said, I'm only doing this if I'm not a contender, it's Dalvin Cook. He was amazing last year. Finished as the number 2 running back in fantasy despite missing 2 games. He was second at the position in carries, touches, scrimmage yards, and touchdowns. He had 22 carries inside the opponent's 5-yard line, which topped the NFL. He's finished top 3 in fantasy points per game each of the past 2 seasons, but he does have those durability concerns. He's missed at least 2 games in all 4 of his NFL seasons, and I think that's the risk with Cook. He just turned 26 yesterday, so happy belated birthday, Dalvin. And if you're holding a dynasty and you're not a contender, I think there's real risk that you miss the optimal selling window if you don't do it now. Coming off that huge year, if he has a significant injury this year, or even just some minor injuries that cost him playing time and hurt his numbers, I don't think you're ever going to be able to get the value that you can for him right now, because going into next year, you'll be holding an often injured running back who's going into his age 27 season. And his injury history is pretty noteworthy. As I mentioned, he's missed at least 2 games every year. Yeah, that injury history does include the ACL tear in 2017, a hamstring strain that cost him 5 games in 2018, a left shoulder sprain that cost him 2 games in 2019, and then last year he had a groin strain. So really the thing that sticks out to me with those injuries is a lot of them are lower body injuries, and that does concern me more with running backs. So I guess the bottom line right now for me is that he's going as running back 4 in Dynasty, and I think that's incredible value that you have to capitalize on if you're not contending, especially with a player with an injury history like his and one that's at a risky position to start with in running back.
Good.
With your caveat, I guess it's tough to argue with. If you don't think you're going to be a contending team the next 2 years, you really don't want to be hanging on to him going into his 28-29 season. So can't really disagree with you there.
Yeah, if he was 24 or something like Saquon last year, like if I were a rebuilder last year and Saquon did that, I think he's the perfect buy candidate. It's just Dalvin's a couple of years older, and if you're not contending, you're running the risk of losing value.
Levi, I'm with you. He was my sell last year, and totally agree with his injury history and the way that I think about running backs. And I mean, especially if you're not a contender, yeah, of course you want to sell a guy like Cook. You want to sell even McCaffrey. You probably want to sell like Joe Mixon, Ezekiel Elliott. You want to sell those types of guys if you're not a contender, and see if you can get some younger pieces for that. But I didn't pick Dalvin Cook for my sell this year, but I totally agree with you. But he proved me wrong last year. That's why I didn't pick him this year. So
yeah. I think he's just about at peak value right now, just based on how good he was last year. So that's part of my thought process. But Brent, I'll let you go next. Who was your sell this year, if not Dalvin?
No, I really like this guy a lot. I just feel like the hype has gotten too much. And my sell is Darnell Mooney. Love the guy the last couple years in the NFL. It's just some people are just picking him way too high in best balls. And I know there's got to be at least one person in your league that's going to pay too much for him. I don't think he can ever be a wide receiver 1 for a team. I think he's a pretty good wide receiver 2, but if you can find some good value, maybe like a high draft pick, or even a good running back for Mooney or something, I just take advantage of it. If you can't find anybody, great. I mean, you have Darnell Mooney on your team, so it's not that big of a loss. I mean, I don't think he's gonna have that much better of a year than he did last year. I think last year he had like 61 catches.
Yep.
So, I mean, it wasn't spectacular. He might get 70, 75 this year. But he's really good at the go routes. Justin Fields is pretty good at throwing the go routes. So, I mean, there's that. But I don't think Andy Dalton is going to find him very much. That's not Andy Dalton's strength. If Andy Dalton's the quarterback for half the year, Mooney's not going to do much for you for that half. I think the better chance for Mooney would be having Justin Fields as his quarterback, but still, even with Fields as his quarterback, I just don't see him ever as a wide receiver 1, even on his team. So if you can, sell him. If not, I mean, get to keep him. He's a pretty good wide receiver.
I agree.
One of the trades I found was Darnell Mooney for Myles Gaskin straight up. Do you like that one, Brent?
And I'm not even a Myles Gaskin fan, but I'd probably take Gaskin.
Yeah, I agree with you, Brent. I don't like having a rookie quarterback for having a receiver. and so I think Mooney's going to suffer. His stats are going to suffer this year. I think you can sell pretty high right now on a guy that was, if you got him last year, he's drafted in the 5th round. You got him for nothing. I'd take what you gained in value and sell him off to somebody else now.
Yeah. He's going as wide receiver 51, so I think it just depends, like you said, Brent, a lot of what you can get. I know there are people out there who really do love him, and there are things to like with him. He did have 98 targets as a rookie last season, so and then potentially with Justin Fields coming in, some improved quarterback play. But I don't hate selling him either if you can get good value and if you need a running back, or if you are trying to fill a need at another need on your team. I think you can probably get a pretty good deal for Mooney right now.
Mm-hmm.
Trevin, who's your sell?
So my sell is David Montgomery, and he just hasn't been great since he came into the league 2 years ago until the last half of last year. The final 6 games, he actually had 155 fantasy points, averaged 26 points a game those last 6 games of last year. So probably helped you make the playoffs or maybe win a championship. 5 yards a rush on those games, but his schedule was absolutely terrible. Those last six games he played, they were all top 6 in terms of fantasy points they give up to running backs. That was the Lions, who were 1st, Texans 2nd, Jags 3rd, Packers twice, who were 5th, giving up points to running backs, and Vikings were the 6th team. Montgomery's only 23. I think you can get a pretty good value for him now. And another thing about him, what really set him apart last year compared to his rookie year were his catches. And that was because Tariq Cohen went down, who was just absolutely sucking up catches before that. So Montgomery had 54 receptions last year, an increase from 25 the year before. Before Cohen got hurt, his first year and a half in the league, he only had 3 games with more than 3 targets his whole career before Cohen got hurt. After Cohen got hurt, he had plenty of games of 8 targets, 9 targets. So Cohen coming back is going to take all those receptions away. Tariq Cohen has actually had targets the last 2 years before he got injured of 91 targets and 104 targets. So I don't see the target staying with Montgomery. I think he can sell high at a pretty good price now because I don't think he's going to match what he did last year. And also with Fields, I think we'll be starting pretty early, and I think that's going to take away some of those goal line carries and rushing touchdowns too.
I like it. I'm not a huge Montgomery fan. He was number 6 in the league in red zone touches last year, Trevin, which, to your point, that helped him have 10 touchdowns, 10 total touchdowns, which is number 10 among running backs. So if he does start to lose some of those high value touches on the goal line, along with some of those receptions to Tariq Cohen, then it starts to become hard to make a case for him where he's going as kind of a middle of the pack running back too. So I like your pick.
I don't know. I mean, I definitely see what I can get for him. I just think that he's quietly a decent play in fantasy. I just don't think that people are in love with him that they would overpay for him. Honestly, I'd probably just keep him on my team, see if he can repeat what he did the last. I mean, he was like one of the most productive running backs in the last month of the year last year. Yeah, the defenses weren't the greatest.
No, they were the worst. Is the thing. They were just not the greatest. They were terrible.
But I mean, still, he got the touches, he got the catches. Tariq Cohen, he hasn't practiced yet, so at least early on this year, he'll be able to get the catches. But
I think PPR scoring, Montgomery has had 2 games his rookie year of over 20 points, and only 1 game in last year over 20 points before those last 6 games this season. And in the last 6 games of the season, he averaged 25 points a game going against the worst rushing defenses in the league.
Obviously, there was some change on those teams year over year, but I think it is worth noting that of those last 6 games, 4 of them were against divisional opponents. He played the Packers twice, the Lions once, and the Vikings once. So there may be a chance for him to beat up on some of those poor defenses, which could help him a little bit this year too. Get to play all those teams twice.
And I don't like Damian Williams. I don't see him dipping into his touches at all. So, I mean, it's just him and maybe Tariq Cohen for the last half of the year. and probably a better offense too.
Yeah, he's one of those polarizing players, I think, where you don't just kind of think he's okay. You either like him or you hate him, it seems like. And I probably lean more towards the not a big fan of David Montgomery side. So, but he's an interesting player. I'm really interested to see how he does, to see if there is some actual improvement, like he seemed to show in those last 6 games, or if it was just kind of a mirage that was helped by the run defenses that he faced, like you alluded to, Trevin.
Yep.
All right, Brent, who is your dynasty stash?
This was pretty tough because there's like 3-4 players that you can easily stash in this division that I really like. But the one that I decided to choose was Jamar Jefferson, Detroit Lions running back. In college, he looked like a pretty good NFL caliber running back. He hits the hole, great at reading his blockers. 133 carries, 858 yards in only 6 games last year in the Pac-10. So almost 1,000 yards in a half a season. 238 yards, 238 carries, almost 1,400 yards his freshman year in 2018, where he is playing above Artavis Pierce, current Chicago Bears running back. Right now, he's having a pretty good camp. I'm just hearing good things about him from the beat writers. Definitely, if he takes that number 3 back job at Detroit this year in the preseason, he'll definitely have a good opportunity to make something of himself, because DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams, if one of those guys goes down, Jamar Jefferson will probably be talked about in fantasy football. And it's very possible that Swift and Williams will go down. I think the Lions, they want to run the ball, and I do think out of all the bad things that we say about the Lions this year or this offseason, their offensive line is actually pretty good. They get some good offensive linemen, and if Swift or Williams go down, Jamar Jefferson might be the next guy up, and he might take advantage of that. And I mean, he's definitely worth a stash in this situation.
Yeah.
Brent.
I like him as a stash, Brent.
Stash.
He's certainly got it was kind of surprising to see him slip all the way to the 7th round this year. I thought maybe he would get a little more draft capital than that, but he didn't, and now he's kind of stuck and behind DeAndre Swift, just hoping for that injury. So, but if, like you said, if Swift and or Jamal Williams go down, then he could potentially have some value. Trevin, who's your stash?
So my stash is Kenny Nwangwu. So I'm not sure how to say his name. Nwangwu?
You just nailed it.
Say his name?
Nailed it. Just keep trying. You'll get it.
Nwangwu? Anyway, Minnesota running back from Iowa State. He's actually drafted in the 4th round, even though he didn't play a whole lot at Iowa State as a running back. He was behind Montgomery, then Breece Hall. Tore his Achilles his freshman year there after a okay freshman year. So he's actually, how old does that make him? 23 now. But it was good enough for the Vikings to take him in the 4th round. He's probably going to be getting a lot of special teams play. He ended up running a 4.3 at the Iowa State Pro Day. So probably doing a lot of kickoffs and punt returns this year, but maybe he can fill in as that back behind Cook, and Cook is 26 years old, so I think he's a decent stash to have for the future.
I like the pick. I like it. He was one of my 4 guys that I was trying to decide from choosing this stash. Especially we just talked about Dalvin Cook with his injury history. Alexander Madison had a couple opportunities to be the number 1 guy last year when Cook missed like a half or something, but he really didn't take advantage of that, and maybe a guy like this Ngakoue can take advantage of that. And I mean, watching in college, watching him on those long runs he looked amazing. He's fast. He's fun to watch.
Averaged 27 kick return yards for all of his years at Iowa State.
Mm-hmm.
I think the most impressive thing he said to me, Trevin, was that he tore his Achilles or ruptured his Achilles while he was at Iowa State. And he's coming into the league as a running back and got picked in the 4th round.
Yeah,
so
never thought of that.
Gives you a little hope for Cam Akers, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like the
decent
pick.
stash.
Yeah, not a bad flyer. Incredible testing too, and I think that's the other thing that stuck out to me is we hear how the cutting and stuff is the hardest thing for running backs to come back from that Achilles, and he had one of the a pretty high agility score coming out as far as his testing numbers. So good burst and good agility testing, which I think again maybe gives you a little optimism for Cam Akers.
Mm-hmm. Who's your stash, Levi?
Mine is Tyler Conklin. So Conklin's going into his 4th season after being selected in the 5th round of the 2018 draft. Has best pro season last year, finished with 26 catches for 194 yards and a touchdown while splitting time with Kyle Rudolph and Irv Smith Jr. And while he played in all 16 games, I think it's worth noting that he recorded all of 26 of his catches in only 7 of those games, all of which were in the second half of last season. So he really came on strong towards the end of the year. And he was on the field a lot at the end of last season, despite the presence of Rudolph and Irv Smith. From week 10 on, he played on over 60% of the Vikings snaps in each game and peaked at 90% in week 16. Kyle Rudolph has now gone to New York, so playing time will be split between Irv Smith and Conklin this year. I think Conklin has a chance to carve out a decent role in this passing game. And then he is an unrestricted free agent after this season, which means he could end up as a clear starter elsewhere in 2022 for his age 27 season and prime for a good role in an offense if he does leave Minnesota. So I think there is a path here to him potentially having some value this year and then ending up in a good situation one way or another next year.
Good pick.
I like it. I'm not a huge Irv Smith fan, so I'm with you on taking a flyer on Conklin.
Yeah, I like it a lot. I mean, you took some of the notes that I have from later on, so thanks, Levi.
You're welcome. All right, we're being too agreeable tonight, guys. We got to turn up the heat a little bit. So, Brent, start us off with your redraft sleeper.
Let's stick with the Vikings, and my sleeper is Adam Thielen. He had 29 touchdowns in the last 3 years. That's extremely good for a wide receiver. He's quietly done that too. Very consistent receiver. With Justin Jefferson on the other side, he's going to keep on opening things up for Thielen. Last year wasn't a great year with catches. I think he had like 74 catches. Let me just get to his page, but
yes, he did.
I think it's very possible that he can get 85, maybe 90 catches and over 1,000 yards this year. And, I mean, another 10 touchdowns. I mean, he's basically averaged 10 touchdowns the last 3 years. I don't know why he wouldn't. I mean, with the great Kirk Cousins at quarterback. The rankings that I'm looking at right now, I see that he's a 22nd wide receiver. I think he can definitely be wide receiver 1 this year. I mean, him and Justin Jefferson can handle that. So, I really like Thielen for redraft. Not sure on Dynasty, but again, this year, I mean, Thielen can do it again. So I really like Adam Thielen for redraft this year.
All right, Brent, here's where I get to butt heads with you a little bit.
All right,
Thielen's my redraft fade. Wow. So he's currently going 41st in ESPN's ADP, 41st overall as wide receiver 15. Last year, like you mentioned, Brent, he had 74 catches, 925 yards, and 14 touchdowns on 108 targets. His 20 end zone targets were 3 more than any other player. So I think that we'll get to this, but those end zone targets and that TD number of TDs is what I have a hard time seeing him repeating. He did also just
3 years in a row.
The 14 touchdowns was a pretty big outlier for him. He'd never even hit double digits before, and I just question whether he did again. His pace the prior 4 years works out to about 7 touchdowns in a 17-game season if you take how many touchdowns he was averaging. So about half of what he did last year was the 4 years prior, is kind of the way I split it, Brent. And then last year he did disappear at times. He had 6 games with single-digit fantasy points, but he did have the high ceiling with 6 top 10 weeks as well, which was tied for third most in 15 games, and a lot of that was fueled by those touchdowns. So to me, it just all comes down to those touchdowns, and I'm not as optimistic as you are, Brent, that he's able to repeat that based on what he had done previously in his career.
I mean, you come up with some good points and everything, but I mean, he did miss 6 games in 2019. So
Yeah,
I mean, definitely could have more touchdowns than the 6 that he had that year, but he was definitely on pace from having pretty close to 10, and he had 9 in 2018, which is 9 is pretty close to 10 too. So I think there's nothing wrong with me saying that he can definitely get 10 this year. So, I mean, the thing that I'm looking at, you said that he is a 15th wide receiver getting taken. So maybe it depends on what we're looking at. 15 is a little bit higher, is a little bit like a better draft position than what I see him at 22. So, I mean, I get what you're saying, but I do think there's a very good chance he could be wide receiver 1.
Yeah, and just to clarify, Brent, the way I calculated that 7 over 17 games is I took that he had 24 touchdowns over the last 4 seasons, and I just took that on divided by how many games he played in, and then multiplied it by the 17-game season to get that 7 average, because he had the 5 and the 4 and full 16-game seasons to go along with the 9 that he had in a 16-game season and the 6 and 10. So,
and some other things you're not counting here. That the playoff games, his last 2 playoff games, he had 9 catches for 102 yards, 12 catches for 179 yards. So you can, I mean, I know that doesn't count for fantasy, but it's still a football game. So I don't know. I like Thielen.
Yeah, Trevin, where do you fall on Thielen?
More on Brent's side than your side. I think he's just been so consistent. 2017, he was wide receiver 9 overall. 2018, he's wide receiver 5 overall. He had the injuries in 2019, but I think his average was still at the 15-ish points per week. And then 2020, he's wide receiver 10 overall. So, yeah, his touchdowns are probably an outlier last year, but I think his catches are probably going to increase. He did miss 2 games last year. So he actually averaged 17.5 points per game last year. So him and Cousins, it's pretty obvious they have a connection in the red zone, and I think he's comfortable throwing it to him. He's comfortable that Thielen's going to be open. Thielen's game isn't built off athleticism, so even though he is a year older, it's not going to take his game off a cliff. So I think he's still going to get red zone targets. I think his catches will probably increase. And we've seen him with other alpha receivers before when Diggs was there, and now with Jefferson there, so I'm just not worried about him having a strong second receiver hurting Thielen's value.
Yeah, I just think his ceiling's capped around 1,000 yards with Jefferson there. Diggs was never the Diggs that he was in Buffalo while he was in Minneapolis. And so I just look at it and I say if he gets the same amount of yards as last year, but only half as many touchdowns, then he's probably closer to that wide receiver 2 to 3 range than the 1 to 2 range where he's currently being drafted. And he's also going into his age 31 season. So, yes, his game isn't totally reliant on athleticism, but I don't know that he's a player who is just going to age without any impact. And to your point about 2019, Trevin, he averaged just a little over 11 fantasy points per game in those 10 games, despite the 6 touchdowns, because he had only 400 yards in those games. So that was number 42 among receivers. So
yeah,
I don't know. It's going to be interesting with him this year for sure.
Levi, you make some good points, but for Dynasty, I'm okay if you want to get rid of him right now. But the last 3 years is when Thielen has really stepped it up and he's done pretty good. And who was his quarterback the last 3 years? It was Kirk Cousins. Before that, it wasn't Cousins. So with Cousins, he's really good. So I don't know. Dynasty, yeah. I'm okay.
I'm more with Brent.
All right. Well, we'll see what the listeners think. Trevin, who's your redraft sleeper?
My redraft sleeper is Jamal Williams with the Lions. That we've heard Anthony Lynn's comments about him as a classic A back there. I don't expect him to be the lead back or the guy getting the most carries, but I think he is going to have a pretty big role there. And if there's any injuries to Swift, I can also see the Lions not wanting to run Swift into the ground this year if they are a terrible team, and letting Williams take some of that load and maybe get a better team than next year and have Swift have a larger role that year. So I just think Williams is going to have some more workload than what we're looking at. And if there's any injuries to Swift or if they shut Swift down, then you're looking at maybe the guy, a 3-down back there with the Lions.
So where are you forecasting him as far as his finish this year?
What's his ADP right now?
I don't know. Somebody should have looked that up before they picked him. Huh?
Listen, I like him. I don't care where the ADP is.
The rankings that I'm looking at, he's the number 42 for redraft for running back rankings.
So, Trevin, do you want to say where you think he'll finish?
I mean, I'm comfortable with drafting him there, and if, like I said, I think he's gonna have a larger role than that. I would say he's in front of. I really don't like. I'd say closer to 30. I'm just looking at the names at the ESPN ADP. Damian Harris, 31. David Johnson, Melvin Gordon, Kenyon Drake, Zach Moss, James Conner. I think he's pretty comfortably up near those guys in my mind, and less from the Devin Singletary, J.D. McKissick, Tony Pollard that he's being drafted around.
Yeah. I think that's probably about right. Kind of somewhere between where you said and where he's going. He was averaged 9 points per game last season, which was number 42 among running backs. And the year before, he averaged 10.5, which was 34. So he can do it on a limited workload. And he's just not exciting to me. Like, he's probably going to get 120 carries, and he's probably going to get 30 to 35 catches. But unless Swift goes down, I just don't see a lot of value in redraft, and that's kind of why I'm avoiding him. And I'll just dive into it. The other reason I'm kind of avoiding him, or maybe not as enthusiastic at least about him as you are, is Swift is my sleeper. He's going 34th overall as running back 16. He's going into his second NFL season. I think he's pretty clearly the lead back in Detroit, despite the stupid comments from the OC there. He was limited to 114 carries in 13 games as a rookie, but he was pretty busy as a receiver. He was no lower than 13th in targets, receptions, receiving yards, catch rate, and yards per target among running backs. He had at least 4 targets in 11 games, but he actually never had more than 5 in a single outing. So all told, he finished with 57 targets that he turned into 46 catches for 357 yards and 2 touchdowns. That works out to about 7 PPR points per week just based on his receiving alone. The risk is he scored on probably an unsustainable 8 of his 114 carries as a rookie, so I don't think that he'll be able to keep that up. And I expect the Lions to be pretty bad, as we've talked about, but I do expect Swift to pretty clearly dominate the touches this season. Peterson's gone. Swift started to take over the backfield at the end of last season. He averaged over 12 carries per game for the last 6 games. And like you mentioned, Trevin, Jamal Williams is second in line for touches, but he just doesn't really scare me. He seems like more of a complimentary player based on the way Green Bay used him, and I think that's probably how it's going to work out in Detroit as well. So I do expect Swift to be able to offset some of that high touchdown rate regression with just a larger workload this season, and I think he has the upside to finish as a top 12 running back this season, and you can get him in the 3rd round, so I think that's a pretty good value at this point.
I mean, that's not a bad pick. It's, I think Swift is he has the opportunity to be like a top 5 running back this year behind that offensive line. They're going to want to run the ball a lot. Jamal Williams, that's why I don't hate Trevin's pick either. But the biggest thing with Swift is he's got to stay healthy. He's got to play those 16 games. He's got to finish those games. If he can do that, he's going to be a top 5 running back overall, maybe even better. But I don't think he can. So there's going to be some games missed by Swift, and that's when you want to start Jamal Williams. That's why you might want to take a flyer on Jamar Jefferson. So I don't know. I don't hate both of your guys' picks. The Lions are going to run the hell out of that ball, and so
you think Dan Campbell wants to run the ball?
Yeah, I think so. The strength of their team is their offensive line. So why not take advantage of that?
Yeah. Swift did miss 3 games last year, but it was concussion. So I don't know how. I mean, Brent, you sound like you expect him to miss some time. I don't really like forecasting injuries if I can avoid it.
I don't either. I don't
kind
either.
of a fluky thing like that. So
yeah, but he's already hurt right now.
He is,
and he's never taken on a big load at Georgia. So I don't know. It's just some question marks. But if he can, he's going to be a great running back. So, I mean, I don't mind. I don't mind you taking a chance on him.
Yeah, that injury you alluded to is a groin injury that he's kind of missing some time with right now. Brent and Trevin, is that part of what your calculus was in going with Jamal Williams here?
I just think if there's any injuries like that, the Lions, I just think, are going to be so bad that they're going to say, what's the point of – if he's dinged up, then they're not going to have him carry the ball 15 times next week. So I'm not trying to forecast injuries, but I think if they happen, then they're just going to really be conservative with him and not put 200 carries on him this year and probably a meaningless season.
You think the kneecap biter's thinking that far ahead?
Yeah, I do.
You're giving him a little more credit for being strategic than the average fan is, I think.
50 ounces of coffee a day. I think it gets brains at a higher level.
I saw that.
I saw the video. Somebody tried to do what he does. They calculated how many milligrams of caffeine. It's like 1,000, which is like basically like I think like 3 or 4 Bang Energies or like 7 Red Bulls or something like that. They got like halfway through and they're like, "There's no way I can finish this." So they left the second coffee in the fridge. Wild. The Dan Campbell challenge is raging in the streets. Well, I did my fade already with Adam Thielen, so Trevin, I'll let you go next.
So my redraft fade is Devonte Smith. I'm not a huge fan of rookie receivers anyway, as somebody I need on a redraft team where you need him to produce that first year. He's getting banged up in practice right now. He's missing some time. He's supposed to be ready by week 1, but that's just a lot of time missed to try to develop a relationship with your quarterback going into the season. And then the Hurts hasn't been good so far in preseason from reports coming out of camp. So if Hurts is gone, then he's got to develop a relationship with a new quarterback too halfway through the season. And I just don't. I'm worried he's not going to have a good year this year. So I'm not going to be getting Devonte Smith on any of my redraft teams.
Yeah, he's currently going as wide receiver 41 overall, just behind Gallup and Landry, and just ahead of Deebo Samuel and Curtis Samuel brothers.
Jalen Waddle's there next. Samuel brothers. Yeah, Waddle's there next too. Just as another rookie that I'd rather have over Smith this year.
Yeah, give me Antonio Brown in that range every time.
Yep.
Brett, I know you're a big Devonte Smith fan. Any concerns as we see him missing time going into the year?
I love Devonte Smith.
This year, though?
Yeah.
All right.
Do you want to elaborate on that, Brett? Address any of Trevin's points?
Well, first off, what week is it right now?
It's preseason week 1, Brett.
Devonte Smith, Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, yeah, we know what we're talking about.
Okay.
Well, I think, Brett, do you want to address any of his points about Smith missing time with an injury and trying to develop a rapport with Hurts and that type of thing?
No, I mean, I'm not worried about that at all. I mean, if anything, he deserves a rest. I mean, he's that good, I think. So, it might hurt the first couple weeks, but I think to close the year, I think he'll be very good. And I'm not staying away from him because he's got a little injury, so he'll be back soon.
All right.
So would you take him over where his redraft ADP is now at that 41 range? Would you take him over Brandon Cooks, Laviska Shenault, William Fuller, Tyler Boyd, DJ Chark, Michael Gallup, Jarvis Landry, all above him?
Tyler Boyd, I'd probably take over him.
But the rest, you'd probably take Devonte Smith?
Probably, yeah.
Oh, boy. You could have him.
All right.
Brent's a true believer. All right, Brent, who are you fading?
I am fading Irv Smith, and Levi took a lot of my notes from when he talked about Tyler Conklin. I was going to talk about Conklin quite a bit, but I think Irv Smith is going to have a similar year that he did last year, and he'll disappoint a lot of people. They got rid of Rudolph, but Tyler Conklin's going to have his role. So, not his role, but he's going to have a role in that offense too. They'll play a lot of 2 tight ends, and Conklin might even get similar stats to Irv Smith, and that would put both of them maybe tight end 3. So maybe low tight end 2. So I shouldn't say tight end 3. They'll be low tight end 2. So I don't think they're worth drafting. I think you can find better tight ends than Irv Smith. You can find Tyler Higbee, Robert Tonyan, Logan Thomas, John Smith, and maybe even Adam Troutman. I'd rather probably have all those guys above Irv Smith. So I'm definitely staying away from Irv Smith, partly because of Conklin and partly because I just don't think he's that great of a tight end. And there's other guys that you can choose. So that's my thought on Irv Smith.
Yeah, I like Smith, but I don't know. He's going into his 3rd year, and he only has 91 targets in 29 games, so about 3 per game. I think this is a big year for him as far as if he doesn't break out and they have to make a decision on whether or not to bring back Conklin, then he might have a hard time coming back from that if Conklin does have a good year. And if he has a really good year, then maybe they let Conklin walk and Irv Smith kind of takes over as the 3rd pass-catching option in that offense, which I think it's wide open for him or Amir Smith-Marset or somebody, anybody, to break out and kind of start phasing in as Adam Thielen gets a little bit older. So, I mean, the other options are pretty uninspiring. Chad Beebe and D.D. Westbrook. So they're looking for that 3rd option. I think it could be Irv Smith, but he hasn't given us a lot of flashes to date to really give a lot of hope going forward.
Yeah, I'm with you. Irv Smith is ADP on ESPN is 14th tight end, and I'm not going to have him on any of my redraft teams.
All right, fellas, that is the NFC North. So we head out west next week, wrap this puppy up with AFC West and the NFC West, and that should be fun. Brent, we got a little bit of a curveball for our question of the week this week. We got a listener question, or a viewer question, I guess, as we live stream on StreamYard here. The question comes from Kelly Bassett, who says, how long should a person wait for a reply on a trade offer before reaching out to that person via text? Cough, cough, Brent.
Sounds like I need to check my offers.
I think it is a good question, though. What do you think, Levi?
Maybe 2 days, I would say, is fair. I think 24 hours is generally, you should try to get back to people, but maybe the extra day is just kind of a grace period. What do you guys think?
But so after 2 days, you would reach out by text and just say, hey, man, have you looked at the trade offer?
Probably. Unless it's somebody like I know to texted before about trades or stuff, I usually might send them a text just right after I send it saying, hey, I sent you something, let me know what you think. But if it's somebody I don't talk to regularly, I might give them a couple days to look at it. And if I don't hear anything, try to reach out. What do you think?
Yeah. I think it definitely depends on what part of the season you're in. If you're in the off season, there's no real – I mean, a lot of times you have some different trade offers, but when it's in season, you kind of need to know if they are considering it so you can send out a different offer if you want to. So I'd say during the off season, definitely a little more leeway.
Yeah, in season, it might be closer to 1 day for me.
Yeah.
Brent, did you have an offer out there that you were able to find?
Well, first off, what team is Kelly?
He's K-Bass is kicking asses in the Campus to Canton League on Sleeper, I think is where he sent you the offer in question.
Campus to Canton. I was looking at Scranton.
Man, I hope we get a live accept right here on the air. That'd be cool.
That would be pretty sweet.
All right, here we go.
Live reaction from Brent to this offer for
you don't have to say the name if you don't want to, but how's it?
Oh,
good
come
offer?
on.
He
He must not be a listener of the show. He's trying to give me. Should I say it? Should I say that?
Oh, that's if you're not. Yeah,
he's trying to give me Jalen Hurts for Trey Lance. Come on.
Straight up.
He's giving me a first round pick for next year. Whoop-de-doo.
Whoop-de-doo. On the NFL side or the campus side?
NFL side. So maybe I can pick up an undrafted wide receiver with that first round draft pick.
Damn, I was hoping we'd get a live accept. That'd be cool.
I think we got a live reject instead.
Yeah, sorry, Kelly. It's I turned off my notifications on the Sleeper app, and I haven't figured out how to turn them back on. So I actually have to go in the Sleeper app to check my stuff. So my bad.
Step one,
You might
Brent,
want to.
you go to Best Buy and you get an iPhone instead of your rinky-dink phone you got, and then you can your notifications will be on.
I will say
True.
you have gotten better at texting back in group text. I haven't gotten individual text in a while. when
Yeah.
We've texted. So I don't know what you're doing differently, but it's working.
Oh, really? Cool. Good. Glad to hear that.
Should we do a quick beer check before we go, fellas?
Oh, yeah.
All right, Trevin, what do you got?
Tonight, I'm drinking some more Yinglings. I had a Yingling Golden Pilsner. Very good. Let's say 8.4. And then I got a Yingling Premium Lager. Premium beer. I don't know if it's lager or not. And also good. 7.9.
Wow.
How about you guys?
All right, what about you?
Levi, I'm going to let you go. I have too many bubbles in mine. I just poured it in my cup.
Well, Brett waits for his bubbles to die down. I just have a cup of water because my stomach was bothering me last week, and I went out and had I finally felt back to normal yesterday, and I went out and had a cheeseburger and fries and felt awful all afternoon. So I'm playing it pretty safe here, fellas, as I try to make sure I'm all the way better. So I just got water, and I'll give that ice cold water 8.5.
Really? Huh. That's kind of disappointing. I expected better.
Yeah.
For water?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry to disappoint you on my water score.
You're getting
All
up there
right.
in age. You got to watch your tummy issues.
Captain Bubbles, what do you got over there?
Bubbles.
Captain Bubbles. I'm back at the Thunderhead Brewing Company. You guys might know how to pronounce this better than me, but is it Shaban's? You guys ever hear it?
Oh, yeah. I've had that. I don't know how to say it either.
Premium Mid-American Pilsner. So I'll give it a try. The bubbles are still up there, but I can go through it.
I think it's Corpse, Brett.
I can't believe you thought
Asshole.
I said corpse. And then Britt trying to correct you with the spelling was hilarious.
I
Yeah,
get
that
you
was-
two confused a lot. What can I say?
Oh, you son of a bitch.
Yeah, Brent, did you really think you had me when you sent me Corpse on?
I thought
Twitter?
I'd get you. Then I felt pretty stupid after you said that. I'm like, fuck. Why the fuck did I do that? But I should have just sent it. I should have just sent it in a text, so the whole world can't see it.
I thought last week when I said like Marine Corps, like because I thought maybe you would know how that was spelled with the PS, but it's pronounced Corps, that would help you out. But
I didn't
that
think of
didn't
that.
precede you to. That didn't prevent you from blowing your own toe off. Shoot yourself in the foot.
I didn't think of that. So, but this beer is very good. It's very good. I'd give it a 9.0. It's a very
Nice.
good beer.
Is that the wheat one? By the brew?
Barley hops.
Very nice.
Lager.
Oh, yeah, I got you. It's that picture of just the German guy on the front of it.
Yep. It's very
I know
good.
which one you're talking
Schlaben
about.
or whatever.
Yeah,
Mr. Schlaben.
that's Mr. Slavin himself.
Bit bubbly,
All right.
but it's okay.
Captain Bubbles says it's 9.0. Well, thanks for being part of the Fantasy Players Club, everybody. We'll have a new episode for you next week that'll live stream on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. Until then, on behalf of Brent Bubbles Hikus and Trevin Girl Dad Cremosta, this is Levi the Heartbreak Kid Valentine wishing you a great week.
See ya.
See ya.
All right, fellas, for the after show, before we get to our recommendations for TV and movies, Trevin, did you see this headline on ESPN? Las Vegas Raiders quarterback Derek Carr dreams of catching Tom Brady by playing until 45 years old.
Yeah.
Here's
That's
the
something to
lead.
catch Tom Brady in, I guess.
Tom Brady just turned 44 years old and is entering his 22nd NFL season. Derek Carr is entering year 8, and the Las Vegas Raiders quarterback just might be using Brady as a target, so to speak. I feel like I can play another 15 years without a doubt, Carr, who turned 30 on March 28th, said Wednesday after Raiders coach John Gruden gave the team the day off from on-field practice. Nothing's hurting. It's the middle of camp, and I feel great. I feel strong. I feel fast. I feel explosive, and I think it's just the way we train now. So Derek Carr play until 45, maybe. You got 15 more years to look forward to.
I'd like him to set his sights on something a little more difficult on catching Brady on, as far as maybe winning some Super Bowls or making some playoffs or
make a playoffs first.
having some MVP seasons. But I guess we're just going for age. Longevity, baby.
Yeah, does he know that you don't get to
kinda-
play till 45 unless you're doing all of those other things? It's not just that players don't want to play till 45. It's they don't get the chance if they're not playing at that high level.
I'm going to give him a bit of a break. I'd imagine there's some pretty dumb questions during training camp. I bet it got framed as, how you feeling? You're getting older. So he just kind of gave a goofy answer would be my take on it. I don't think that's his actual goal. I think he just turned a dumb question into a goofy answer. But yeah,
Could be.
it's not what I want to hear.
He went on to talk about how he's getting gray hairs in his beard now, so he can't grow it out. So maybe that was the case.
Yeah.
All right, fellas. TV or movie recommendations? Trevin, you put a few on here.
Yeah, I'm watching some good stuff. I think you should leave the comedy skit on Netflix. That season 2 dropped a couple weeks ago, and I didn't give it as a recommendation on here. Just hilarious. I'm sure you've seen the memes coming out of it on Twitter, but goddamn, that show's funny. White Lotus on HBO. That one's probably not for everybody. There is a murder mystery element to it, but it's more of just these 2 or 3 families at a resort in Hawaii trying to learn from each other type of stuff. Like, it's hilarious, but it doesn't really have a plot to it, so it might not be for everybody. But there's also a Malice at the Palace.
It's like
Yeah,
Godzilla versus King Kong. No plot. Just
No, not really. It's just around these 3 families and just how they treat each other and stuff. But there's a new Malice at the Palace documentary on Netflix. I don't know how many parts are actually going to be in it. The first one just dropped a couple nights ago. It's about an hour and a half long, so I can't imagine there being more than 2 or 3 episodes. But it's really interesting. They really didn't show everything that was filmed that night on all the clips that I remember seeing when it first happened. And it's pretty wild how the media framed it as just these NBA thugs, and then you see all these different camera angles and like how fans were sim and the fans were jumping on the kid. That means they can do anything they want. And so a lot of it instigated by the fans trying to fight these, NBA level athletes. And then all the media on every station was just what's the NBA going to do about these thugs? So really good documentary. They got interviews from all the players and some of the fans that were involved in it too. So it's got everybody in there.
Restore Ron Artest's good name, huh?
I don't know about that, but he comes off pretty good, and like he admits that he is pretty open about having a therapist at the time, but still wasn't quite right as far as mentally, and he's definitely in a better space now. But he sees how wrong he was at that time and most of his decisions he was making.
This is on Showtime, right?
No, Netflix.
Okay. I wonder if it's the same one that was on Showtime from a couple years ago.
I don't think so. I think this is new on Netflix.
Okay. Because I know there is a documentary on him on Showtime a couple years ago. That was really good. So
this is called Untold: Malice at the Palace. I completely forgot Reggie Miller was on the team. It was kind of his last chance to win a title, but he was hurt that night is why he's not in any of the video.
They had a pretty good team.
Yeah, it was probably they're playing it was the 2 best teams in the East. They were the Eastern Conference Finals matchup the year before.
So, was it focused just on Ron Artest, or was it like in the whole night? It's
focused on a lot of the Pacers team, the Ron Artest and Jermaine O'Neal's relationship. There's a lot of it, which was I didn't really know at the time because I was pretty young when it happened, but Jermaine O'Neal's really focused guy. Just all he cared about was winning games, and Ron Artest was about the opposite at the time. So they had a lot of run-ins with each other, but then they added Steven Jackson to it, who's down for defending anything really on if any of his teammates did anything. So it's kind of a powder keg.
Speaking of that, to go on top of that, Showtime has a really good documentary. It's mainly focused on Ron Artest and his childhood and his life. It's very good documentary, and it's on Showtime. So that's one that I recommend.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one. I'll have to watch it.
Wild night. Brett, you said you watched Hard Knocks this week?
Trevor, yeah, I watched Hard Knocks last night.
Cool. What'd you guys think? I didn't get a chance to watch.
I don't know. It was decent. I don't know. Fantasy-wise, if you're looking for anything for that, I don't know. Nothing really came out of it like a couple years ago, like Darren Waller. I mean, that's one thing from a couple years ago when they mentioned Darren Waller. Everybody's like, "Oh, this guy might be pretty good." And Colin Churchill still talks about that. I can't remember if he picked him up or just drafted him, but he drafted him because of the Hard Knocks show, and it worked out pretty good. And he wasn't even a rookie that year, too. So that's a good pickup by him just by watching Hard Knocks. Nothing big like that. Sounds like Ezekiel Elliott is doing good, and they want to run the ball. Yeah. So.
CeeDee Lamb's looking amazing in it.
Yeah.
That's what I like to hear.
But
have they talked about Randy Gregory at all yet?
They've only shown him one clip. They didn't talk about it at all. There's just like a D-line meeting. Him and another D-lineman were hanging out, but there wasn't any talk about him. I'd bet he's going to be a storyline later on.
Can I make a prediction?
Sure.
Randy Gregory is going to make the Pro Bowl or first team defensive end this year. He's going to be good.
Wow. It is kind of weird. It's kind of funny seeing Dak Prescott. Like the coaches, all they want him to do is not be practicing as much. And like a lot of the episode one was just them, coaches and training staff, telling him to sit on the sideline and him just saying fuck everything and just like telling every teammate around, like, fuck this shit, I got to play. They're like, you had 2 surgeries on your ankle, man. We don't need you practicing in training camp. We know you're good.
I didn't realize that Dak and Zeke were that close too.
Yeah.
So they're very close. They're like best buds.
By each other presence.
Yeah.
Cool.
The Micah Parsons. He had kind of a funny-ish moment in that Hall of Fame game.
Mm-hmm.
They just took him out after the first quarter, I think. And they're like, yeah, man, we got you in the first round. We don't need you running around in the first quarter of the Hall of Fame game. And then he's on the sideline just saying, fuck this, fuck that, fuck this. I got to get in there. It's like, just take a breath, dude, and see what else you can learn here at your first preseason game and where you're not actually playing football, but whatever.
Not the approach the Steelers took in that game, from what I heard. They still had Najee Harris out there, third, fourth quarter?
I don't know about that late.
I got to be honest with you. I didn't follow the Hall of Fame game.
I didn't either, clearly. I just heard he was playing quite a bit after most of the other starters were out, behind their backup offensive line.
I don't think he ever played in the second half, but I guess I didn't watch the game very well. It was on in the background.
Yeah. And then the last one I had to the list here was Succession. Trevin, this was a previous recommendation from you. I finally been watching it. Finished the first season. Pretty solid show.
Yeah, I love it.
Not a lot of good people to root for, but
nope, that's definitely a part of it. Yeah.
Where can I watch this at?
HBO. That's HBO.
Okay.
Yeah, it's probably my favorite current TV show. And season 3 is getting released here and should be just a couple months.
Nice. And I saw Billions is also making its comeback next month, I believe. So HBO bringing back a couple of fan favorites.
Barry. I can't wait for Barry. That's
I
my
love
second
that
favorite.
show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably my
That's
second
good.
favorite HBO show.
Is that coming out with a new season?
Not till next year, I don't think. I'd bet it's after Succession.
That's a good show. I like that.
All right, there you have some things to watch this week, people. Enjoy. And see you next week.
See ya.